Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be part 2 of the Chorus of Dragons reading vlog, which you could probably tell from the title of the video. So I don't want to babble on too much. In this reading vlog we're going to read the last 2 books of the series, but before we get into that I want to give you a very quick recap of the first 3 books, just in case you haven't just watched the first part, but maybe you watched it when it came out, like probably 2 months ago. I don't know how long it will take me to finish this. So the first book in this series is The Ruin of Kings. In this one we are following a young boy and then young man called Kirin, who is kind of an orphan. He is brought up in a brothel, and we see his story told from 2 points of view. We have Kirin as an adult in a prison. He's a prisoner, and the person who keeps him there is Talon, a mimic who can eat brains and then basically knows everything about the person and can perfectly impersonate that person as well. And both Talon and Kirin are telling Kirin's story. They're starting from different points in time and telling it to each other. This is a very interesting writing style, and then we have a transcript of the conversation that is written by a third person, and this third person also inserts some footnotes that are sometimes funny and sometimes helpful to read. This first book I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. However, it is a little bit convoluted, and I think that at that point in time the author wasn't really sure-footed enough to tell a story that is this complex. There were a couple of things that were just very confusing and hard to keep track of, especially because in this series people don't tend to stand in their bodies. There is different kinds of being like insurrected, or just swapping bodies, or just looking like someone else, like Talon does a lot. So yeah, it's a little bit hard to keep track of who's who, and because the writing just wasn't that good yet, this could be a little bit confusing in the first book. Then we have the second book, The Name of All Things, and this one we changed things up a little bit because we are now following a woman called Janelle who lives in a different part from what we've seen in the first book. And Janelle's story is told to us also through 2 perspectives. We have Janelle's perspective, and then a person who has been with her for many years, a monk. And they tell her story, and we're basically leading up to Janelle and the monk meeting Kirin at a later point in time. And so they're telling their story, or Janelle's story mainly, to Kirin in this situation. I gave this book 4.5 stars. I definitely liked this more than the first book because it had more of a straightforward focus. It was easier to follow the story, especially the first half of the book I absolutely loved because it is set in a world that is very queer normative, so that was very fun to read about. And it also centers around horses. We do have some kind of very intelligent horse-like creatures in this one, and one of them is friends with Janelle. And yeah, this was just very successful. The second half then does get back into the rhythm of being a little bit confusing, and you're just having to keep up a lot. So yeah, that's why I gave it 4.5 stars. Then we made it to the third book, The Memory of Souls. In this one now, our group of characters that we need to save the world is finally together, and that was the most glorious thing, so I gave this book 5 stars. I think the way these characters interact and just happen to be all together, and just like the multiple layers we have to the story because of who is who and who has been whom in the past and stuff like that, is like still very complex, but much easier to follow in this version, where we do get more footnotes that just help keep track of everything. In this one, again, we do have the same kind of structure, but I feel like it's not as important anymore to the story. The ending was quite shocking. There is a lot going on that is like very not easy to like see happen so quickly, I would guess. So yeah, I absolutely loved that third book. I had so much fun reading that book. and it set me up for success with the last two books, I hope. So I'm very, very happy to now continue reading on in the series. I've just started reading House of Always, and already the beginning of this book is like so good, and I can't wait to dive deeper. Now, the way this works is that I will always update you when I'm halfway through a book and then when I have finished a book. And so, yeah, I think it's time to finish off that series. So it is currently the magical all-nighter for the magical readathon, but I just reached the halfway point in House of Always and wanted to give you a quick update because I desperately need to continue reading this for the readathon. So this book is quite different from the other books we've read so far in the series. In this one, we have all of our characters stuck in one place. And while they are there, we dive deeper into their minds. Now, in this one, we do explore a lot of what happened to other characters that we didn't follow in book 3 during the time of book 3 and then a little bit after. So that is quite interesting to see what they're all up to and to see kind of what happened to them to the point where this book starts, basically, and they all come together in this place. Now, this also means that really nothing is happening while we dive into those memories and see what they have been up to. Well, I wouldn't say nothing is happening, but there's not like an actual plot to this book in a weird way. So that is quite an interesting reading experience. And I had to think about, in Game of Thrones, where the later books are divided, where some of the books focus on, or like one book focuses on some characters, the next book focuses on other characters. And it does feel like that a little bit with this series as well, because we're focusing on these other characters. But at the same time, what I did not have with Game of Thrones is that I cared so much about these other characters. So I think Jenn Lyons is doing something right here. And I am still really enjoying reading this book, and I'm also really intrigued to see whether we will stay this way for the entirety of this book, because now we're halfway through. Nothing has changed much so far. So I am anticipating that it will stay this way for the rest of the book, and it makes me so intrigued about the final book as well. So it is definitely going well, even though what I've just said probably sounds very confusing in a way. I don't know. But yeah, I'm having a great time reading this. I think if you have cared about all of these characters so far, then you will probably also enjoy reading this. I think that because I do like character-driven stories, this really doesn't bother me. I'm fine with them just like thinking about their past. I'm really fine with that. And I also feel like because a lot of the series so far has been quite confusing, it is a nice reprieve to just like finally get to the point where you're really understanding all of the connections. So that's quite nice. One thing I have to say, while we do have the octopus on the cover of the book, and it does show up in this first half, it does not show up remotely enough for what I want. So I don't think it's even coming back. And that's kind of sad. I do like a good octopus in a book. The name of the book, though, very fitting. Very fitting for what is going on. So, yeah, I think that's like really all I can say spoiler free for this book. I'm really scared of like spoiling things because like even talking about who has survived so far is a little bit dangerous. I think we do explore like quite different stories here, and again it's a lot about loss and grief and pain, but then also we have a couple in this book that are trying to make a change for the better. So that's really quite interesting to read about. And we do get more like people who are maybe not people at all, but like goddesses and gods. So that's quite interesting. And yeah, I'm just intrigued. At the same time, I need something to happen at the end of the book, and I'm pretty sure something will happen at the end of this book. So I think I'm just gonna keep reading. It's definitely a very unique experience reading this book, and I'll update you once I've finished this one. So, I finished reading The House of Always a week ago, and I was just so busy I didn't have really the time to sit down and talk about it, which is kind of dumb because now I feel like there has already been so much other stuff in my brain since finishing this book. But I still want to try to tell you how I felt about it in the end. Now, I'm not really sure what I said about the halfway point, but like basically this book has no plot. Like nothing is happening, all of it is mind games, but it is quite interesting, and I think the kind of twist at the end that we get to explain it all was quite interesting, and I definitely did not see that coming. It's also very interesting to think about how that will work out now in the last book, which is very, very exciting. I can't wait to get to that one. But yeah, there were a lot of moments in here that I absolutely loved and I loved reading about. But at the same time, you can definitely ask the question, did I need 500 pages of like nothing happening? And I kind of needed it, but I kind of also didn't. So in the end, I decided to give this 4.5 stars. I think it definitely is not as good as book 3 because in book 3 we just have a lot going on. And then in this one, just like nothing is really going on. Like we do have a lot of like flashbacks to learn about what the characters, the side characters did during book 3. So we kind of caught up with all of the characters now, which I think is very important to go into the last one. I also think it is very interesting to see the divine development we have with some of our characters without like talking about details here, but I definitely enjoyed seeing that. And yeah, I don't know if I can say much more about this in a spoiler-free way, but I think if you're going into this one, you've read up to book 3, you're just going into this one, just remember that this is not about the plot, this is about the characters, and I think it was still kind of important, even though I think you probably could have done a little bit quicker with a little bit less page count, especially because even though 500 pages is not that much, but if you look at these pages, like how much text is on these pages, it takes just forever to read. So that's my final thought on that, spoiler free. So let's go into a couple of spoilers for the people who have already read this book, and let's discuss some of it. So in this book, basically, spoilers, we knew at the end of book 3 that Kieran would die and his soul would go into the prison with Volcareth. And if I say any of the names wrong, I'm sorry, but like it's fantasy names, don't come for me. But basically he goes into the prison and he tries to overwhelm Volcareth so he can control him again, because like his soul has healed, so he thinks he's more powerful. And then in this book we see that that didn't quite work out, that they are having like this eternal like mind fight. But then because of a plot that Sonera came up with, they are like stuck in there with all of the friends. Like we have Tereth and we have Janelle, we have what's his brother's name? we have Galen and his wife, we have Sivan, and we have Talia, and so they're all in there. Zanera is there, Talon is there, which you know, every time Talon shows up, it just makes my day, and especially in this book. And I'm just so intrigued to see what Talon will do in the final book, because I think she will be such a vital and important character in the final book. And I just love Talon so much, like so deeply. She's like my favorite character, I think, of the whole year, probably. And I love her. So yeah, Zanera is up there as well for me. We also have Thurvishar, so they're having their little thing still that is undecided, and just like all of the like character dynamics are so interesting. We also have Quan, which has a little thing going with Galen, which was kind of unexpected but also appreciated. And I just love how like queer everyone is, and how these characters just have to figure out so much. And I love that Jenn Lyons manages to like connect the like personal struggles and the character dynamic struggles with the end of the world, and that it's not like pointless. It's not like, hold the end of the world because I have to be making out. No, she manages to connect the two in a way that really, really works for me. So appreciate that a whole ton. But I still think that, as I said, you could have shrunk it all together a little bit more. Now, obviously, if you give me a book with a big, beautiful octopus on it, you also have to give me a beautiful octopus in the story. And I feel like I was not disappointed with that. We do have the Lash, which was very interesting to read about. Now, obviously, it does take a little bit of time before we get the whole story with that. But just the idea that this is like an octopus that is in love with kind of like the underwater shadow dragon, it was just so cute. And I'm also like so intrigued to see how they will deal with the whole like dragon situation overall, because they now have like one dragon that has its cornerstone. So what will happen now, we'll see about that. And yeah, I think the dragons are like a fascinating aspect of the story, because they were people, and they were also like relevant people, like the relatives of the gods, basically. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see where that goes. But I also really just liked seeing the Lash and the way she interacts with the world. I was very happy about that. I was like a little bit worried whether we would get enough octopus in here for me, but I would say mission accomplished. And apart from that, obviously we get like more scenes with Janelle, Kirin, and Terraith, and I'm just eating that up, and you know it. The like, oh, there's this like one scene where the two boys are making out and Janelle is watching from the corner and stuff like that, and I'm just like, you're all so cute together. And yeah, it works. And I'm so intrigued to see how they end up in the last book, because like things could still go very wrong with all of this. And one thing I especially loved as well is the way that Talia and Sivan are now turning into goddesses. Like Talia is basically the new Tatcha, and Sivan is turning into the new death goddess. And that is such an interesting idea. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just so intrigued, especially because like Talia was chosen by Tatcha, but then she basically chose her lover to go down a similar route. So we'll see about that. And yeah, it's very fascinating. I feel like with this book now, the way it ends, we're like really at the brink of everything, because now Kirin has mastered Valkaros, so he's basically in charge, but he's still trying to hide it so his brother doesn't find out. And we also see like our characters ending this battle about the battle for the library, where all of the prophecies are stored. So also the whole thing with like Zeltarath and Zulus. It's just so intriguing. It's so intriguing, and I'm like really intrigued to see the big final end now. And as I said, just so many things that are just sweet but also sad. We also get, that's something I wanted to talk about. We get a character we know from the first book, and I think it's called, she's called Kalindra, and she was the lover of Corinne, but then she had to leave, and we find out that her mission was to get close to Jareth, I think, is how you could pronounce it. And so they are now married and they have a son, and Jareth then was killed in book 3. And this whole development also with Janelle and their connection and everything like that, it was so sad as well. But Kalindra definitely got on my nerves a lot. Like, she changed so much. Like, I really didn't recognize her from the first book anymore. And I mean, the reasoning that is given here is that, for one, she found like her true love and lost it, but then also she's now a mother and she has to worry about her child, which, yeah, kind of, but then also she's so bitchy in this book. I don't know if this was explained enough for me to really follow. Okay, so I think my cat wants me to finish recording, so I'm gonna do that, and we're gonna meet again when I'm halfway through the final book. So I am now halfway through Discord of Gods. I have less than 250 pages left, which is pretty amazing. Also a little bit scary because I don't want to let go of these characters. And I love them so much. I love this world so much, and I don't know if I'm ready for this to be really over. At the same time, I definitely want to know how this is going to end. I think this last book carries on very much in the same tone as the previous books. There's no like big break there. I think that for this final half, there might be a little bit more action now, but the first half is definitely still like setting up a lot of things. Our characters are going on different missions, trying to set the place, basically. What do you call that? Like, whatever. They're trying to get everything prepared so they can actually save the world. So it's very interesting. I think every character arc right now is very interesting. We see some stuff going wrong again, which is obviously not great. We don't want things to go wrong for our characters. I do like how this is dealing with Corinne's situation right now, because it would be very easy at this stage of the plot to have him separate from all of the other characters, but I do enjoy how he's still able to communicate with some of our characters. I do like our like little individual groups that we set up mostly in book 4, who are now going around trying to get everything ready. I especially love that we have Zanera and Thurvishar now working on the same side and together. They're just such a power couple in a way, and I love that. And yeah, it's just really good fun. We do have quite a few characters that have to go to the afterlife in this book as well, which I thought was very interesting to explore, especially under the like current circumstances. And even it gave it like this little spooky edge, because we are in October right now, so I do like my spooky, so that was really great too. We did see the octopus character again. I don't want to say too much about that because of spoilers, but I just was very happy to see that character again, and they are so iconic. I love them, so that was great to see. And I'm just so excited to go into the last part now. I think the way that, you know, all the game pieces are moving right now, and obviously the bad guys being bad guys and stuff like that, I'm just so intrigued to see how it goes. And yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave it at that. I am so nervous but excited, and we will talk again once I have finished this book. Oh my god. I know this is the weirdest angle, but I currently have to charge my camera, so this is all I can do right now. But I have finished The Discord of Gods, and so I wanted to talk to you about this final book and about the series as a whole and finish out this vlog. This final book was basically everything I wanted it to be. I gave it 5 stars. The finale was great. There was so much at stake there, and the ending was shocking. They did something that I did not see coming at all, which was very clever. And I think if you like really read this as one big series, you know, without big breaks, you might see it coming, but I absolutely did not. So the ending was shocking, it was emotional, it was fun. Yeah, I just really enjoyed this final book. 5 stars, new favorite series, absolutely fantastic. And I think that this last book definitely continues on with the tone of the series, especially if you loved like Memory of Souls and House of Always. I think it is very much in the same vein as those. So I think, you know, if you made it this far in the series, you probably like the tone. And so this is just the perfect finale for the series. I think it couldn't really have gone any other way. We still learn quite a lot about some of our characters, which I thought was interesting. I would have liked to maybe get a tiny little bit more on Reel's War in this one, just so we understand his perspective a little bit more. But yeah, it was just so fascinating and like, whew, stakes were so high, you guys. So yeah, I'm very happy that this series ended on a bang for me. Definitely a new favorite series. And even though it takes so long to read these books, I think that it is worth every second of it. When you are, like me, a more character-driven reader, when you don't need like a ton of plot all the time, obviously this has plot, and as I said, the finale was quite shocking in the plot as well. But I think the high points of the story definitely lie within the characters and their dynamics, and just the whole setup of the world, the complexity that we get with the souls in this one and stuff like that. So I think if you prefer like a very big fleshed out world, a very complex world and complex characters and character dynamics, then you will have a great time with this. If you want non-stop action and battle scenes, this is not the series for you. There is very few battle scenes. I did like the ones that we get because they are very magical in a way. And I felt like Jenn Lyons does a good job of always showing who's where and what are they doing, and it did not get too confusing, which, because I don't read a lot of like battle scenes, that is important to me. I get confused quite easily. So it's just great. It's just great. And if you haven't tried the series yet, I highly encourage it. I also want to remind you that the first book of the series was definitely my least favorite and it felt the most confusing to me. But once you get over that, I think it all gets so much more clear. And Jenn Lyons manages to convey the information that you need so much better so that it isn't as confusing as the first book anymore. So maybe if you're struggling a little bit with the first book, just push through. If you fall in love with the second book, then I think you're set for success with this series, which is always stupid to say, you know, you have to read a whole first book to get to the really good stuff. And I don't want to say that Rune of Kings isn't a good book, it's just a bit more confusing than the rest of the series. That is the spoiler-free part of this review. If you stuck around for that, then thank you so much for watching. I hope I could convince you to read the series now, because it is really just so good. And if you have read the series already, then I want to go into a couple of spoilers that I just try to remember now. To be fair, it has been a few days since I finished the book. I just had to like sit with it a little bit. But yeah, this final book, let's just start from the ending, because the ending was just the most shocking thing to me. Spoilers ahead. Spoilers ahead. So the moment that Kieran gets Rayla's War to kill him because he has the Stone of Shackles, like, they did such a good job, or like Jenn Lyons did such a good job of like making sure that we knew that Kieran has the Stone of Shackles, and then so much happens that I completely forgot about it again. And so that moment was so shocking to me, that we see them switch the souls, and then basically they put Rayla's War into Volcara's body and throw him into the wound. That was so, yeah, that was just so shocking. I did not see that coming. It was so smart. Like, I really thought that, yeah, Kieran would, I just had no idea. I just had no idea how he would get out of this. And it was so good. And the moment I cried definitely is the moment when Jareth disappears, and it was just like, I definitely had a tear trickling down my face at that point. His storyline is just so good, and his character is so good. I feel like we get so little of him, but still you feel so much for him, especially also because of Kalindra, and we just see like her feelings towards him as a person. So yeah, I just had such a big emotional connection to such a minor side character, which was a very interesting experience. And I think that this whole like little plan at the end, it was just so smart, and I was like really proud of our characters that they put that together and that it worked out. Obviously, we also have the whole Sivan situation at the end, which I really like the way we get this like little last chapter at the end as well. And yeah, that was so beautiful too. And I felt so bad for Talia. I think one thing at the end that confused me a little bit, but maybe that is just something like we can deal with that at some other point, is the dragons, because now would be a great time to reunite the dragons with their cornerstones and get rid of that threat as well. And I felt like they were just like, oh well, we can live with the dragons, you know. And I'm like, maybe not, maybe don't do that. So that was a little bit odd that this was never brought up again at the end. I really liked that we got to see a lot more of Tayenzo in this last book as the Empress, and the way that her situation also played into everything. And I think that having the second mimic was also quite interesting. I still think we could have learned a little bit more about the mimics and where the rest of them are, because there are like, I don't know, like 10 more somewhere in the world and stuff like that. So it was nice to see at least one more of those. But yeah, something I also would have liked to see a little bit more of is with Zanera. We kind of learn that she has this blockade that basically makes her not use all of her powers as whatever she is, like an empathetic mage, whatever. So that could have been resolved a little bit more. I would have loved to see her and Dervishar at the end again, to be honest. But yeah, I think that this book just had so much in it, and it felt like so completely satisfying, apart from the dragon thing that I mentioned. And it's just something you have to pull off. And I feel like when I read this, I definitely had that feeling that Jenn Lyons was planning out this series completely before she published the first book. Like, it definitely feels like so thought through with everything, and it just all makes sense so much, which is something I really, really appreciate. And even though you could say, well, all of our like main characters kind of get a happy ending, it still feels like the stakes were high. You obviously know that in this world there is so much of like souls fuckery that really dying is very hard. So I thought that was interesting as well. So yeah, one other thing that happened is that they fixed the sun. that was also quite interesting. I don't know if I like really understood the science there, but it was definitely an interesting twist that kind of like reversed a lot of what was the problem in the first place. And just overall, as I said, I feel like this series has so much where you really feel the thought that went into it and how deeply Jenn Lyons knows this world and how it works. And that is just very satisfying to read about. I don't even know if I have much more to say, to be honest. I just loved it so much, and there is so much going on, but I don't know. I'm just happy now. I'm just really happy. I will miss these characters, and even though it took very much of my reading time to read these, I can totally see myself rereading those someday. Probably not in the next 2 years, but like someday. So I think I'm just gonna end it here, you guys. I just really hope that if you've read the series, you were also happy with it, that you also found some new favorite books, as I did. I would love to hear about all of that in the comments. If you do mention spoilers, please mark that clearly so nobody reads them when they haven't read the books yet. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye!